So it's 3. So good evening, everyone. We start the session now. I am Varsha, Communications Associate from the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. I'm going to be hosting the session today, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the third online workshop of Stage 2 of India Cycles for Change and Streets for People challenges. This workshop is for all cities who are looking to hire competent urban designers to implement healthy streets. So if you are a stage 2 city or a season 2 city, this workshop is relevant to all of you. We have attendees on Zoom and as well on YouTube, so welcome everyone. We also have a quiz planned out at the end, and we are looking forward to a very interactive session today. So if you can, I would request you all to please switch on your videos. Before we start, let us take a look at the quick agenda of the day. We will kickstart the session with opening remarks from Jinal Savla, Principal Advisor, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and National Institute of Urban Affairs. Next, we will share a presentation on the importance of the test, learn, scale methodology. Then we move on to a panel discussion with representatives from Chennai Smart City and HCP Design Planning and Management, who will be sharing their experiences through the test, learn, and scale process. We will conclude with a walkthrough to the challenge roadmap and the next steps towards progress submissions. Stay tuned for that. Also, we have an interactive quiz, as I mentioned before, at the end of the session to engage with all of you. Before we get started, I would like to share a few things. Type your questions in the Q&A box. Our team will shortlist these questions and moderate the Q&A session. If you like a question, you can also upvote it and bring them to our attention. And please feel free to chat and interact with each other in the chat box throughout the session. And make sure that you address the chat to panelists and attendees so that it's visible to everyone. Towards the end of the session, in the interactive quiz, you will be requiring a mobile phone or laptop to access the web page. We'll give you a heads up just before the quiz so that you can be ready. And with that, let's get started. So let us quickly take a look at our journey so far. Let the presentation start. You can switch over the presentation. Yes. So many streets have formed the Healthy Streets Apex Committee, with 19 of them actively working towards adopting a healthy street policy. And this year alone, we have had 13 cities participating in open street campaigns. And this means more than 1,000 kilometers of walking and cycling infrastructure are underway. We also had the pleasure of holding a Healthy Streets Capacity Development Workshop in Bengaluru. We had the opportunity to meet everyone in person. And the workshop covered the goals and submission timelines and touched upon topics like what makes a good street design, how to sustain campaigns through effective communication strategies, and help build a walking and cycling habit. And finally, about parking and parking management. These sessions are available on our website for you to watch, and the presentations from the sessions are also available on our resources section. We also went on exposure visits to learn from
Sorry, I think we're facing a technical glitch. I'll just quickly continue from here. So like she was saying, we also went on multiple on-ground visits to learn from what was happening on the ground in Bangalore. We also had cycling visits with our city officials from Bangalore, and as well as all the other participants who were there. And congratulations to all of the cities for initiating work that y'all have already done towards the 2023 goals. We're super, super excited for all of you to commence work on your network plans and scale up as we move ahead. Okay. With that, I would like to invite Jinal.
So with that, I'd like to invite Jinal Savla, the Principal Advisor, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and National Institute of Urban Affairs, to share a few words to start the workshop.
Thanks so much. For those of you who were at the Bangalore workshop, you'll recall that there was a presentation made by Vikas Thakur as well as Pranjal Kulkarni. They showed us what to do and what not to do for good designs and implementation. Very often when we undertake projects, especially street projects, we sort of have a simple checkbox approach. If 1.5 meters sidewalk is provided, check. If a crosswalk is provided, check. If trees are provided for shade, check. But when we look closely, we realize that the sidewalks perhaps are undulate. I mean, they're not continuous, they're obstructed and hence can't be used. The crosswalks very often just lead to barricaded traffic islands, and so you can't really use them. The trees that are planted for shade may be very weak, or they don't have percolation pits, or even just something as simple as paving around them is in a way that they fall apart in 2 weeks. So God lies in details, and we need to pay much closer attention to how people are actually using the spaces. And so our design as well as implementation needs to be responsive to this. Very often as city administrators and sometimes perhaps even as engineers, our job is to get things done, and we may not have the same design skills that are required to get these jobs done. So let's bring on people with these skills, with design skills into our team. Let's bring the best hearts and minds and hands to help us achieve our results and get the projects done. So in this session today, I believe we're going to focus on how to get this design talent for our projects. Since we have the Streets for People and Cycles for Change mid-interim submissions due in October, as well as Placemaking Marathon 3.0 happening this November, I hope that you can learn from this workshop, get the best talent, and get the projects going on the ground. With that, thank you so much, ITDP, and wish everybody the best of luck for this workshop.
Thank you so much, Jinal, for kickstarting the workshop with those inspiring words. Let us now move on to the panel discussion with the cities on the importance of testing design on ground prior to implementation. To moderate the discussion and to invite the panelists, I invite my colleague from ITDP, Parin Visaria, Deputy Manager for Inclusive and Compact Cities. Gentle reminder, panelists, please stick to the presentation time of 7 minutes. Over to you, Parin.
Thank you, Varsha. Can we have the presentation up on the screen? Thank you, Angi. So what you see on the screen are some pictures of street design that have been implemented. And these are nothing but street design from our own very cities in India. The very first picture that you see is from Bangalore. And many of you in the recent offline workshop also got a chance to feel these streets. We have a commercial street in Ahmedabad, that is CG Road. It has seen a process of a redesign, not once, but twice. We have a street from Kozhikode, and we have a pedestrian street right in the heart of the city in Indore called Chappan Dukan. And all these streets today have become a benchmark streets. And these are just handful of streets that I am showing it to you all. I'm sure our cities have done, many cities have done such great examples, from Pune to Pimpri Chinchwad to Delhi to Chennai to Amritsar. So there are a lot of bunch of streets that our cities have designed that are at a benchmark level, which is created at a good quality, good design. And today these streets have not only improved the movement of people who walk, people who cycle, but at the same time have also improved the movement of traffic. So it's creating less congestion, less chaos, and it is giving a new image to our Indian streets, where we always felt that our streets are chaotic. If you move to the next slide, also many cities have done very simple interventions like simple footpaths, simple order in parking, which is ensured that the traffic is moving well. At the same time, pedestrians are safe. So over and all, creating good design that is functional, that is working for all users. And for that very thing, today we have two panelists with us. And let me introduce to you all, to both of them. So we have Mr. Raj Cherubal from Chennai Smart City Limited, CEO. And we have Nikisha from HCP Design Planning and Management Private Limited, uh, Director Urban Design. And both of them are here to share the journey of Chennai on how did they achieve such high quality works, and also Nikki here to speak a little more on what an urban design consultant can contribute to the betterment of the streets in the city. So I would like to invite first Raj to present uh, the journey of Chennai streets work.
Sure. Thank you so much. And since I have only 7 minutes, I will ask Venu to flip through the slides. It's kind of self-explanatory, but I want to focus not on what Chennai has achieved as much as how we went about it and how can we replicate it and the importance of consultants. So go ahead, Venu, share your. So you can keep flipping 2 seconds each or something, and I'll ask you to stop wherever. So I'll speak as we go. Process started long ago, where the idea of having a street for people itself was like an alien idea, right? Why would you want to do that when you have so many cars on the road? So it took amazing amount of persuasion from all kinds of different people, including ITDP and various other NGOs, a lot of parallel activities. And luckily, we had a lot of sympathetic officials. Even when they got transferred, they would go from wherever they are. They end up, doing helping us. So we took some piloting. These were actually big pilots. And just a sec, I'll stop here. For example, this is Fesanagar, and this is where the consultant part comes in, because I want to focus on that, because how to build a footpath, etc. is manuals are available. What we miss out is that city. I don't know about Paris and London. Probably they do have capacity, but even there, I suspect they get good consultants. We need a space, people inside the city government, obviously, who understand this subject. There's no question about it. They also should have some linkage with organizations like ITDP, etc., who can bring global experience. That's also very important. But the problems of the street are so complicated that no engineer in the corporation or no architect in the corporation can handle a city of 1 million, 10 million, and so on and so forth. So, for example, just look at this street. The argument was that why would you want to widen the pavement when there's so much trouble? This is a residential area, there's a commercial area. Whether it's a commercial or residential itself is a big argument, and so on. So it takes a good consultant who understands all these different aspects to figure out how do you park a car, do you park it parallel, do you park it perpendicular, who do you listen to, the shops or the walking people, what about the street hawker? All I'm saying is that it is not an easy problem to solve, and it cannot be done by a few people inside the city government. So it is very important that you, first of all, adopt some manuals, like this one, for example. The mayor was very, very supportive at that time. But the point is, look at the size of the footpath, and it doesn't make any logical sense in the traditional sense, right? Why would you want to do this when there are hardly any human beings? But then what people don't realize is the moment you build footpath, people start walking on it. And the people actually stop taking autos and cars. They actually start walking long distance just because there's a footpath. So you can flip through it when can go through it. So one of the things we did, of course, the city was first to adopt a policy. But again, I wouldn't put too much faith in policies, because policies come and go. You need infrastructure, you need the capacity to translate policy into reality, but policy surely helps. You need to obviously to build the capacity of the engineers, because it's not about engineering, it's about the mindset, right? You need to be able to see different things happening. A lot of visits to various places, and we have learned tremendous amount from Bangalore, Pune, and bunch of other cities. Amazing stuff. And I am a big fan of foreign travel by government officials. I know people get cynical about it, but unless people go abroad and see what's going on in comparable cities, it cannot be Scandinavian city where there's hardly any human being. It has to be a Hong Kong to figure out how did they handle the same density, but with gigantic footpaths and gigantic trees and whatnot. even Chinese cities for that matter. So anywhere that is comparable, so people understand that it is not an engineering problem, it's more of a political will and public's desire. So you can flip through it. If I were to start all over again, or if I were to advise another city, what I would suggest is do various things in parallel, right? One, try to identify proper detailed project reports for networks of cycling, networks of roads, network of this, network of that, and assume that you're going to implement this in the 5-10 year range, right? Because otherwise what happens, we are simply reacting to the problems. This road can be pedestrian, that road can be pedestrian. But this consultant business will take a long time because city may not know how to handle the consultant, and so all kinds of complications. Okay, so in parallel, get consultants to study the network. So what you're seeing on the screen is a Egmore network that we try to kind of connect to each other. Bits and pieces of footpath being made, but the idea is that slowly you start connecting so people are able to walk long distance and not simply 100 meters, 200 meters. Carry on. Next one. So have a long-term plan. And then also things like happy streets and coffee Sundays are important because people need to reimagine the space. It's very difficult. See, if if you have watched ITDB presentation, etc., of course, it's obvious that you can do it. But 99% of the people, it's very difficult for them to imagine that a street can be used for something else, right? So it is important that we do these kinds of activities so that you start thinking differently. Why not a vendor? Why not children playing on the road? So it's a mental barrier. It's not an architectural problem. It's not an engineering problem. Next one. I'll try to go as fast as possible. At some point, once you have, let's assume 100 kilometers of network, you think amazing stuff can be done. You need to be realistically breaking them into packages and with manual standards, etc. You need to be able to get a lot of different consultants empaneled so that they can be hired very fast and you can start the parallel work. Because for example, even if you have great DPR, sometimes it will get stuck somewhere. Either the police may not agree, either somebody else may not agree, public may not agree. So create DPRs in parallel so that once you prove one place, then everybody start asking you, give me a pedestrian plaza, give me a cycle track, because initially there's going to be a lot of skepticism. So you need to act in parallel because we're not no longer in a piloting mode. Okay, next one. So this one, for example, then the reason I told you to create DPRs, there's a reason for it. Look at the above picture, which is basically the for example, Pondi Bazaar, what it used to be, one of the biggest commercial places in the world, but it was a total shabby chaos. But it didn't get implemented in 1 year. It actually took probably 10 years for us to get here because we created ideas, we created concepts. There's no money, then there is money, then there is something else. So that each parallel process of each street is going to take you probably a few months or probably a few years, probably never will happen, right? So I would suggest big cities to start becoming factories of DPRs with good consultants, and learning to manage the consultant itself is going to be a major challenge for the city. So learn to do things in parallel and start building capacity to doing stuff, not simply going through manuals. So this is what Pondi Bazaar looks right now. So now good thing is that every elected representative wants a pedestrian plaza in his or her constituency. Then there are practical challenges, right? Parking management is an extremely difficult project, but most of these pedestrian footpath activity will not succeed unless you have control over parking, which means you need to start working on parking in parallel. Get good consultants, be realistic, tendering process, etc. It's a painful problem, but you cannot underestimate the power of parking or lack of parking on the effect of pedestrian plazas and footpaths. Then as Venuat showed earlier, smart bike, for example, it's easy to say we'll have bikes, but then the question becomes how do you actually integrate this with the footpath and metro rails and buses and so on? It is an extremely difficult problem. Don't underestimate it, but do it in parallel, right? What I'm trying to again and again say is that this is an iterative process. I mean, when you look at a finished picture, it looks beautiful, but it is still an unfinished iterative process, right? So this is how a city will evolve. You can keep going through this. And then what we did was Chennai, we decided, the government decided that let's take, now that the pedestrian plaza is a big success, people are really happy. Let's get some serious consultants, take 6 packages in the city and study not simply from a road point of view or a footpath point of view, but from an area point of view. So you have to take flooding into account. So for example, Chennai has a lot of flooding problem, which means this consultant has to answer, if there is water on the road, where is the water going to go? Is there a nearby park? Can it act like a sponge city? And so on and so forth. Then there are, think of it like a cake, right? Cake has multiple layers. So what about safety? What about children's safety? What about where is the parking going to happen? Where's the cycling going to happen? What about the trees? What's the point of building a footpath which is super hot and nobody wants to walk? So how are you going to plant trees which are not going to obstruct footpath? So the consultant initially may look at it purely from a simple footpath point of view or how to draw a line between footpath and the road. But we have come to a point where the consultants in six big packages, gigantic packages, are looking at everything on the surface, everything under the surface, and this is where it gets even more complicated because the water department may be completely somebody else, and they may or may not have a plan to do anything with the pipes underneath. And if tomorrow, if you do a beautiful work on top, and then the pipe guy doesn't come, then it's all goes down the drain, right? So it'll get more and more complicated as you go forward. The point I'm trying to make is that start piloting if you want to, or get great consultants. Already many of the cities have done this work. So I would suggest get those RFPs that capture all those essence of all the different things the consultant is supposed to do, and make sure that the consultant is following through all those things. And also in terms of dealing with police, dealing with the public, dealing with politicians, getting the buy-in, and so on and so forth. Do not underestimate the power of consultants and groups, and this is not something handful of people can do. It has to be a much bigger effort, but we have to start somewhere. I'll stop at this, and when there are questions in the panel, I'll answer that.
Thank you so much, Raj, for taking us through the journey of Chennai Streets program. Before we go to the discussion, I'd like to invite our second panelist, Nikki Shah, to present, and then we'll take up the questions and have a discussion. Nikki, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just share my screen. I'll go as fast as possible. Okay, I'm going to talk about our experience on the transformation of the streets, primarily taking an example and the learnings from CG Road and the Chennai project. As Raj mentioned, we are doing one of the package in Chennai. Typically, when we talk about streets and we want to know what streets are in India, just glimpse at what our streets actually looks like. This is somewhere from Ahmedabad. You have asphalt, you have a central verge, you have lighting, and random parking. That's something which is very typical to majority of the streets which we normally see in our Indian cities. Sometimes it is active, which has a beautiful market, but not really very well integrated, probably. The cities are always in the transformation, so you'll have an old building and a new building construction. So you'll always have a problem with the interface of the streets and the adjoining properties. That is also an important aspect of the street transformation. Despite of having footpaths and everything, where the many efforts have been done by the corporations or the better designs, not in an integrated manner, we still end up not using it the way we are supposed to use it. So your random parking, vendors, and the storage and many things happens on the street, which is not really a street transformation. Despite of having a wider footpath, probably there are no trees, vending thing is not really organized well. So you end up looking like that. And of course, parking becomes a major issue, which everybody talks about that's the major problem we need to solve. Despite of having footpaths and everything, we still need to walk on the streets because there is no continuity. So that's what our street actually are, and we need to reach far along as we talk about. The street is a right of way, so every property needs a right of way. We need to make sure that we don't ignore that. Most of the time, as Raj mentioned, if you just do it with one intention in mind, just creating a footpath or a line of curb and everything, but not to worry about all these things in integrated manner, you end up not doing anything also. That's where expert, I would say, a consultant or expert, or the person who, or the team who has experience on such aspects can manage the integration aspect. I think that's something which is important for such projects. Otherwise, we will always see it as a unilateral work or a project. Better integration of existing trees. We have lack of trees in the cities. Wherever we have, we should make it better use of it, or at least make sure that it doesn't get harmed while the traffic is moving. The new infrastructure is being built. We need to integrate them also well. Yeah, underground services, definitely. Sitting benches, everything which is something which is necessary. So this is the typically efforts being made in the local situations without any design interventions, and that's where we end up eventually getting. Larger planning, the lane of roads, the traffics, and the access roads and everything, you end up wasting the important public space also if you don't plan it well in a larger network. And typically this is what our streets are. But our streets aspire to be is something like this. So we have a far reach. We need wider walkways, large trees, signages, lighting, safer pedestrian crossings, of course, the lane for the vehicle to go, parking and everything. And that's our aspiration. And why not? We should be able to do this also in our cities. And as Raj mentioned, I think there are many examples which we have already done, but it needs to be much in a greater expand. And this is what the typical streets are in the European countries, basically. And it's not a rocket science, but it's a hard work where we don't think about one or two aspects, but all the aspects needs to be taken care while we are doing it. And designing and the detailing becomes an essential part, apart from all the stakeholder participation, departments and the utilities and the parking managements and everything. Ultimately, the physicality of the whole thing plays an important role. I'm coming from the design perspective in this case. Busy cities, as this is Hong Kong, other one was Barcelona. This is again in Barcelona, where some of the streets can be pedestrianized or pedestrian-oriented streets like Pondy Bazaar, you can say, where the traffic becomes lesser than the pedestrian movement. So something which is a larger city level decision needs to be taken, not just ad hoc. And every street cannot be pedestrianized also, of course. And of course, we need plantation and trees in our climate, and which will help, of course, to make it use better of this. So all these streets are carefully designed and sorry, something got off. Planned to be a great public space. Ultimately, what our Indian street should be a better organized streets, a street where it's easier to walk, more easily safely crossed. Many accidents happens. Also accommodate better public transportation, as we are relying on the new mode of public transportation as we go along. We need to make sure that they integrate well. On-street parking is also something which is crucial. Vending is inevitable. We cannot just say no vending zone. It's definitely going to happen. Trees is essentials. And also when we talk about overall network, yes, but when we develop primary streets, of course, we have to make sure that the cross streets also functions well. And the streets needs to be evolved as we speak along. And when the time changes, it needs to be transformed again and again, or evolved in a way. So that design is to accommodate those also. We cannot keep on doing the rework all the time. So our approach is something which we have to focus on the traffic. Yes, we have to do the traffic studies and everything. We organize that, organize junctions, which is mandatory. Otherwise, nothing functions actually. Infrastructure needs to be integrated and coordinated. Activities, definitely, we cannot just see only the vending and other things. There are many other aspects of the street which needs to be integrated. Ensures the quality of standardizing the basic elements and details which can be scalable in the particular city or multiple cities. And at particular locations, or the particular elements can be customized to respond to the context and the city. All of these are the basic fundamental aspects. Of course, there are many more, 7 I'm highlighting. And focusing on the design and detail, as Jinal mentioned in the beginning, that the designing and the detailing is crucial for any such things, not just the overall planning. So as this is one of the earlier street transformation project in Ahmedabad, CG Road in 25 years ago, which transformed the one of the boulevard, one of the street of 2.5 kilometers in late 90s, which saw a great deal of organized parking, lanes, and pedestrian walkways, and the lighting, and the tree plantations, and everything. And that has changed the kind of dialogue in the Indian scenario. And of course, it has become an important part of the city in that way. But eventually, yes, it has aged eventually, and we needed to completely redesign the aspects to the new age and the current time. So problems of vending, parking not happening properly. The car sizes have increased compared to 25 years ago. So the parking sizes was not really helpful, and all of that. There are many practical problems. It's a long discussion on that. So that needed something. There are two aspects of the design. One is the larger planning and the detailing. For that, we make sure that we understand the street well. So a bit of context study are important, whatever we do, and really map it properly. So we have a very clear idea how we are going to solve the problem of the streets. So land use, the frontages, access points. Typically, this is the problem. This is the biggest hurdle, one of the biggest hurdle where we talk about the continuity of the footpath, where you have so many access. We have so many smaller plots adjacent to the streets, where we continually break the continuity of the footpaths and everything. So something which is crucial to integrate in the design. Utilities, a lot of streets are old, underground services are there, we don't know where they are, needs to be mapped and all of that. Trees, yes, wherever there are trees needs to be checked and mapped. So in physicality of the street transformation, we take care of them, and not usually what happens, we don't design the streets cutting the trees in mind, end up having the trees on the asphalt, and eventually they cut it because it really hinder the traffic flow, and that has seen in many situations and examples. It really need a tree inventory at one point. Of course, the parking study needs to be done as a process, day and night, vending day and night. Planning and trying out options are also important. Sometimes you don't have one solution. You have to brainstorm and have a discussion with various departments and the traffic police and the other stakeholders to make sure that we are really solving the problem of the place. So this is an example of CG Road, where this was the earlier design, which was already in place. We wanted to transform. So a lot of discussion, a lot of people were saying to widen the street instead of 2-lane, make it 3-lane, then put parking, then there is no footpath, then 2-lane and the parking and the footpath. So there are many iterative process happen actually a long time ago, and it took a long time also to conclude. And eventually we end up concluding to a parallel parking first time somehow in Ahmedabad, through a parallel parking, and a wider walkway was achieved.
Sorry, Nikki, to interrupt you. If you could wrap it up in another minute or two.
Yeah, I'll just quickly, it's a little long presentation. I had already won Venu, but I'll go through that. We can take up a few things later. So sometimes you also need to try out the temporary solutions meanwhile, while you do the larger interventions. So you don't end up making an error. So you also do some sort of parking management and try out if this is working for this particular street, and take up eventually the final solution. Same thing for the junctions. Traffic police are important for such things. So you always have a one-on-one discussions with them to make sure that this is moving, and then eventually take a final call and do the transformation again with the cycle tracks and everything. The cross streets planning is important, and even the larger network planning is important. This is in Chennai, where we are looking at the larger network and the public transportation cycle networks and everything. Underground infrastructure, as everybody knows, needs to be integrated well in the design. If you don't do it, this street transformation is actually eventually will be a failure. You can say that. Simple and robust detailing is critical, I would say, which a lot of list here. I can share the presentation later to see. So this is the first thing we solve is the entrances to the private property. That determines the actual street design, I would say. So various options and how do you make sure that footpath and cycle tracks are continuous. There is a standardization also, no parking, making a policy out of it, so then everybody has a fair chance. Bus stops, utility boxes, dustbins, street junctions, pedestrian crossings, cycle parking on the footpath, toilets and vending space. All of this something which needs to be do it well. And a lot of drawings, a lot of detailing is needed to make sure that we have resolved everything. And it cannot be done with a couple of drawings. So there are set of hundreds of drawings to make sure that we do that. Good detailing, putting them together, aesthetically elegant design solutions also important, not just makeshift situations. Tree plantation, make sure the tree grows, signage is in wayfinding. And of course, this is a visual, and of course, visualizing and telling and communicating people that this is how it's going to be. This is where it is just now. When we plan it, this is what it's going to be without the trees. When the trees start growing, eventually we get something with this shaded streets. Prototypes, of course, good sampling is absolutely important, where department and the corporation actually helps. If there is a good team, one has to be important that we do this prototype. Without that, we don't get the good quality of the construction. Also, trying out the samples, making sure that everything is functioning well, checking with various departments. Sites, on-site sometimes solutions needed, so all of that. So site visits, important. Sampling to make sure that we have tried out enough options. Also checking ourselves to a couple of things. Dustbins are actually a crucial element where we face the problem of maintaining it. So we even do a prototype and check them along with the corporation. Bus stops, on-site meetings with all the stakeholders. Here in the picture, you can see all the engineers of various departments, including the commissioner, making sure that we have answered all the problems and we are making it better. Trying an outcome, definitely, you've seen the couple of pictures already. This is one of its kind. Projects in Ahmedabad, we are also doing a couple of more to in line of this to scale it up further. And that's what eventually you get. That's the top view, the typical street with the parking at the junction, the typical junctions with the pedestrian crossings, bollards and everything. And of course, after the project, we do a bit of our research also. This is done with the design.story. Sophia is here. We work together to film it, and the film is available on the Facebook and the other places, Instagram. And then we get a feedback how this is, and of course we use it for the other projects and continue learning from our work, positive and negative both. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it was a little longer, I guess.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for taking us through the journey of, and especially highlighting the different scope of urban designer, right from planning, design, and going into every small little detail. So I'll first move to Raj. Raj, we have heard about mega bridges. We have heard about mega highways. For the first time, we are hearing mega streets as a program. And it's not 1-2 kilometers of street. We are talking here about 100+ kilometers of street. And certainly Chennai, as you explained, has been through a process over the last 1 decade for them to be able to come to this level of announcing and working towards mega streets. Now, a lot of cities here have just begun their journey towards street design, or are yet to begin there. Hiring design consultant for street design, looking into these details is something very new. A lot of cities are hearing it for the first time. What would be your advice as a city official? What should be their starting journey? So can they start directly towards a network of streets, or was there something which they can start before to get a greater confidence with the city and the elected representatives and citizens?
So actually, I would argue that, see, all the RFP manual, all that stuff is available. So you don't have to worry about that. Let's assume you're a city official. So the first few things only you need to focus on. One, you could get a consultant immediately to do some concepts, right? Take any city, any city in India. There are places which would look amazing if you could do something fancy with it. Yeah. But like I told earlier, most of us cannot reimagine a place, because especially in Indian city where there's so much chaos, and we're also very cynical, right? Because I mean, for the right reason, because nothing happens. We keep talking about it, we keep seeing pictures and videos, but nothing seemed to happen. That's so. How do you get over it? It is through color pictures. So you get a good consultant. Don't worry about underground utility and all that. That's a far future problem. So create images and say, look, if Paris could do this, can we do this? If there's a museum, can we create a museum district around it? If there's a lake, can we do a lake district around it? And so on. Whatever the concept, local theme, Tamil theme, or Marathi theme, etc., right? There are so many angles to it. Get the buy-in of the higher ups, the government, public. Say that, hey, wow, if Chennai or Bangalore can do it, we can also do it, kind of concept. Let's assume there is some seriousness to the whole idea that X rupees will be spent, because these are not cheap projects, by the way. Okay, I'm talking about different levels of project. If you want to do like a plaza-like project, it's an expensive project. If you are simply talking about, there is a philosophical argument that happens, saying, why would you want to spend so much and beautify a place when simple footpaths could take care of more people around the city? It's a very valid debate, and we should engage in it. But I'm assuming we're always talking about some fancy area, pedestrianization, etc. So once you have a serious buy-in, you have to figure out where the money is going to come from, because no point. It's easy to put concepts and DPRs together. Who's going to fund it? It's going to cost, let's say, 20 crores or a kilometer. So it's not going to be cheap, right? So get a World Bank or somebody involved so that they also bring the experience to it. Then, as Nikki showed, there's a zillion things to be done, which no city can do on their own. Get a good consultant, depend on an ITDP or a WRI, etc., who have done amazing work around the world. Because figuring out what an RFP itself will take you 10 years, right? If you're going to reinvent the wheel. So all those things, learn from other cities. What is a manual? Don't worry about, there are manuals. So don't worry about inventing a manual. And then RFP itself should be able to tell a Nikki of the world that, hey, these are the 100 things he's supposed to, if he's a consultant, these are the 100 things he needs to come back. And then iteratively figure out, do we really want to do parking here? Do you don't want to do parking here? You want to do more parking, less parking, tree, no tree? Those are details that consultants can take care. So my point is, go through that process. There's another parallel thing you may want to do is to say, okay, fine, more than as you do the concepts, can we do a serious pilot, right? Can we do a decent footpath with minimum, not gold-plated footpath, but enough for people to be shown that, hey, look, simple engineering and architecture can make life easy for people. So I would say, without reinventing the wheel,
Raj, you're on mute.
I don't think we heard you correctly, Raj, in the last bit.
yeah.
I'm so sorry, Raj. I think you're toggling between mute and unmute. Yeah, there seems to be a glitch.
It's mute now.
Paran, do you want to address the next
Raj
question?
is
Nikki,
still
I
on
guess?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come to Raj. Raj, can you hear
Go
us
ahead.
now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
why don't you finish? We missed you for the last bit. Why don't you finish that?
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that capturing the imagination of the public, that is more important, and figuring out, do you really have the money to do this? Those important things need to be done. What Nikki pointed out are the million details that comes later with good consultants. So that once you have the money and the will to do it, then go get a great consultant and make sure that you are using the right RFP, so that Nikki or the world cannot come back and say, look, I only do 3 things, I cannot do 100 things, and so on and so forth, right? Those things have been worked out by the various cities, so I wouldn't worry.
Sure, Raj. Thank you. I'll move to you, Nikki. So in your presentation, you showed the various scope of work that an urban designer contributes to, right from space planning to design to every little detail, right from street furniture to utilities. But while one part of the entire story is to get the right design, but the other part of it is also to see how this design is, we can put that design across through various stakeholders. That not only means city officials, engineers, but also with other stakeholders like traffic police, various local stakeholders like shopkeepers, residents. So in your experience, does the role of an urban designer extend beyond design?
Yes, of course. When we do certain initial work and when without experience, the planning and urban design team has to take charge of that. If as Raj mentioned, if there are a set of standards and certain processes are already in place, then this process should happen along with the city officials. Definitely. For our experience, which we have worked on a couple of projects where, of course, we have been part. City officials have been helpful to be part of that, but something which we need to, because we probably ultimately it's referred to the design or a solution to the problem, something we have to ask personally, I would say too. So in the process, apart from the corporation, municipal corporation and the various departments, the traffic police plays an important role. In C0 situation, the smart city elements were part of it. So the entire infrastructure, the separate team was working. So coordinating with them and making sure that their elements are integrated. Then the shopkeepers, because being a commercial activity, and we are going to tell them this is where your entrance of the property will be. This is where the entrance will be closed off. This is where the parking will be, and many other aspects of that. So not everybody had the resistance, but we've actually checked each and every property entrances and photograph them, document them, make sure that this is how it used to look like. Now, after the transformation, this is what the result will be. And you will not have any problem accessing your property, something that some role we had played. It's a time-consuming process. Not every project can do that from the consultant point of view. So that's why we make a policy. So a couple of streets which we're doing later stage, where the department is helping to convert them into a standardized policy, so they can just tell them and communicate. A person from corporation or the local authority can communicate directly in that case. So then it becomes a standard practice. Like we have standardized TP schemes, like we have standardized DP processes. This should be a standardized way of doing certain aspects of that, which is a precursor to the design, I would say. It's something which is logistics, something which is it's part of the city governance, I would say. So that can be organized as we go along and have more experience about it. And I think we should take examples from the already executed projects, learn from it, and as Raj mentioned, make a standard practice. There is no way we will achieve the scalability if we don't do the standard practice. And we cannot continue making these programs and manuals and everything where we don't have a continuity, we don't have a consistency, and we continually reinvent the wheel every 5-10 years down the line. So that should not happen. And I would say in the design also, no, because there is no precedent, we have to design it everything. Curb should not be a design. Curb should be a standard element which is a good quality. Everybody should use it. If there are good places like a heritage areas or something where you change the material to stone or granite, that is something different. But 99% of the streets in India will use the concrete curbs. Simple. There has to be a 1 or 2 standardized design which should just function. Entire Europe functions that way, I would say. They have a granite which is standard design. Everywhere they use it throughout the city. So even in the design elements, couple of elements can be standardized where we don't need to think about it. Better integration, how to articulate it well, and making sure that there is no harm to the movement and the public and everything. All of those are the kind of design interventions eventually. And eventually, when we have more experience, I don't think you will need urban designers. It will become a standard practice for the cities.
Sure, Nikki. You highlighted a very important point on standardization because it's not about this 1-2 projects. We are looking at the scalability of this,
Yes.
and it's not every corner of the street you would want to design it at that benchmark. And I'll come to that
And
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a second. Just to add to the point, the scalability aspects also, I think the cost, as Raj mentioned, cost is important. What we are also putting an effort from the design perspective, how to achieve the similar kind of public space as CG Road, for example, in other streets of Ahmedabad, 1/3 of the cost as an effort, where we don't need certain elements probably everywhere. So how do you tone it down and make sure that it still functions in totality as a complete streets and continue using them as a overall transformations on that. So that's something effort has to come from everybody, and where the designer plays an important role, I would say.
Sure. I'll go to Raj. Raj, you mentioned about mega streets, and right now the city has identified 6 neighborhoods, if I'm not wrong, and then the network of streets in each neighborhood. And what I also know is that there are 6 urban designers that the city has hired. Could you share a bit on how these urban designers were onboarded so cities can learn from you, where they empaneled or where they hired? So if you can speak a little bit on the process.
If I remember right, it is purely a tender basis. We call for various architects and firms to come and participate, and the RFP captured the different things they are supposed to do. So from survey to environment report to whatever else, it can be a consortium who comes and says, okay, I'm able to do this, because it's not a itty-bitty job. It's a massive job, right? It's a tendering process. There are other projects, smaller projects, where we've had empaneled people. So I would maybe suggest that you can have different category of projects. If it's a simple linear footpath, etc., there could be what you're asking from the consultant will be lesser, but equally important. You could empanel consultants for that. Then, if you're going to do an area-based approach, etc., you will have to have another set of consultants. Empanelment probably is a good idea, because then you don't have to go through this entire process of tendering, which takes months and months and months. All kinds of process happens. So I think empanelment is a good, but Mega Street, we went through a tendering process.
Sure. And I think it will be good for the cities to also see the RFP for how for the mega streets that the city rolled out. And
I think, Parin, one of the
Yeah.
suggestions I've always made to Smart City Mission and various organizations, including ITDP, I think I hate to use this word, but it's called, I would call it McDonaldization, right? You don't reinvent a burger joint from scratch. If I have a 1 crore, 10 crore, I want to start a McDonald's, I don't start arguing what is a burger, what is a biscuit or whatever, right? And this is why you have McDonald's everywhere. The reason why we don't have high quality stuff in India is because we are reinventing the wheel all the time. Luckily, it's come to a state stand where now there are even the Mahua and everybody is doing amazing work through these challenges and so on. But let's leapfrog a little more and say, can we standardize most of these things so that if a city comes forth and says, I got X crores to do something, they should be immediately given a list of consultants. They can get their own consultants if they want, right? RFP, model RFPs, model tendering documents. How do you empanel documents, and standard manuals? We've always had this debate of which manual is the right manual. What about the underground utility manual? So I think time has come for India to kind of have a set of things that is standard for every city. Like Nikki pointed out, if there is a temple or a mosque or a heritage place, how do you bring a different element to it? That each consultant will worry about. But every city I've seen, we start discussing whether to use an HTP pipe or a plastic pipe or a concrete ducting, etc., etc. I think if we keep debating this is not scalable at all, right? So I would suggest the outcome of these challenges should be as much not standardization, the wrong word, packaging of it, so that a city doesn't have to spend 20 years figuring out what we are talking about.
I think I'll add to the, let me add to the what Raj was just saying. I think that's is really important. This reinventing the wheel, it happens street to street also. So it's not cities to cities. In the same street,
Absolutely.
same
Absolutely.
city, we are doing one street, and the next street, a kilometer down the line, people are saying, okay, why can't you make it a little different? No,
Yeah.
so that's something which we should avoid. Even in, I think as we go along, I think the Chennai, the intention, what the mega street which we're doing in the Chennai also is absolutely important, because we are not talking about okay, this is the street, now design it. We still has the street, identify a street, but the time will come and the effort should be made from ITDP and the people who are actually leading this at one point to actually give the area. Let's say in the Chennai, which is the area which might have 100 kilometers of the street, and through the process of planning, the street design comes at the second stage. The first stage should be the overall planning, the area planning, where you simply categorize the number of streets in 1 or 2 or 3 typology and say, okay, these streets are primary and it has a metro stations and the BRTS and everything, and it should have a public space. So this is going to cost a little more. And the rest of the streets are neighborhood streets, simple houses, and the bit of walkway and tree plantation, lighting will do, because parking will be inside the individual houses probably. You categorize them. You give them the kind of grade to the street transformation. Also, because sometimes the infrastructure underneath is complex based on the category of the street. So all of that will play a role where you say that do a planning first, like area planning, do a planning plus and categorize them and say, can now label these streets, this is how it is, and then do the project work and detail out accordingly. So cost will be rationalized rather than every time we look at the street, some streets are costly, some streets are cheaper, and we always debate over that. Let's change these details, it will reduce the cost. Not do that. You should do a gross rather than individual street aspects, the city-wide and the area-wide. So then the cost is distributed rather than every time debated. That should not happen.
Makes sense. Will, I can take one more question. There are a lot of things to ask you all, but with a short time. So Nikki, one question to you. As you are engaging with the city, what is it that you would recommend other cities that are listening to you all? What kind of support as an urban design consultant that you expect from the city that will help any urban design consultant to do a quality job in the city?
Help from whom?
From the city. The
city has many. The city has the local body, the government who is actually managing the city, and the citizens.
Yeah, you will be.
See, our experience is it's a painstaking experience of getting the stuff out of the various departments. I would say, very frankly speaking, and understanding infrastructure becomes a crucial job for any street transformation. We cannot take any decisions on the surface design if you don't know what is underground. We don't know if there are projects proposed on the streets which will change the street design. So this availability of the information and the documentation, if it's not there, then it becomes a time-consuming process for the consultant or a designer to actually do the design. And it will keep on revising and revising and revising as the time goes if the things are not in place or documented well. So there are two ways of doing it. Whenever there is a consultancy RFP, either the city should have the underground mapping done already, so we don't waste time. That's not urban designer's job, I would say, primarily. In an ideal situation, of course, we do it and we love to do it because we can solve it. We are problem solvers. But it's a waste of time, I would say. So something in a coordinated manner, we figure it out. In CG Road, we took a year to do that, though it was not part of the RFP and even the scope of the contractor. Just sake of the importance of the particular street, the contractor and us and everybody pitch in and documented the entire underground infrastructure. If we start doing it for every street in the country, it will take ages to do that. One of the parallel job, I would say, to the various departments, that while you are floating the RFPs and the understanding and beginning the street transformations, start documenting these things also as we go along and help them, the surveyor team or the planning team or something, which will enable the faster way of solving the problem. And so because the infrastructure planning becomes a whole other ball game, and as you know, the material, HDB pipe, this system, precast manuals, the technology has changed, and so many aspects which needs to be taken care of that. So either we need to have a time in the process that this is dedicated for that, and then only you start the designing, so you don't do the unnecessary iterations. Have a bit of parallel processes done already as we go along. I think that's something which is very important and primary to start with. Of course, there are many other smaller matters where access to the various departments, making sure that we have access and we can talk to traffic police, crucial job, the cycle network planning, BRTS, metros. There are many other aspects of which we need to, but that's something which is doable. But this underground utility becomes a hassle, I would say. It's a bottleneck.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nikki. We are running short on time. Otherwise, I would have loved to put more questions to both of you all. So thank you so much, Raj and Nikki, for taking us through the presentation, answering the questions. And I'm sure the other cities attendees who are part of the panel, they will certainly reach out to you all for more. And I pass it on over to Varsha to take it ahead.
Thank you, Raj, Nikki, and Parin for a very engaging panel discussion. Now we are moving on to the next segment. I would like to invite my colleague Venugopal to make the technical presentation on the importance and process of hiring the right urban designers. Over to you, Venu.
Thank you, Varsha. Thank you, Parin, Nikki, and Raj. A very insightful discussion. And like Parin said, more thoughts and questions. And I'm still in that zone of the discussion, and I'll probably follow up with you all. And in case the other participants have questions unanswered, do put it on the chat or write to us on WhatsApp, and we'll bounce it off the panelists and get back to you. So what you see on the screen are the C4C, S4P national challenge goals that all of you are familiar with, and we've shared this to you time and again on offline and online workshops. The webinar today primarily focused on this first bucket of action of designing it right before we implement the infrastructure. And towards this, as part of the next presentation, my colleague Bala will take you through the submission requirements for October as well as for April 2023, and some of the milestones under Action Foundation and Communications that all cities are encouraged to work towards. So, as shared in the previous workshops, these are the 4 steps towards implementing permanent interventions in this first bucket of action. And the first piece is on identifying sites in your city and developing a project proposal. The second one is on preparing detailed designs, which we've had a discussion with the panelists today, and the meat of my discussion today will also revolve around this. The third is on testing the design on the ground, capturing learnings, and then going towards making it permanent as well. So the first step, though we've discussed in depth in previous workshops, is touching on the same, that it's very critical, like how Raj and Nikki also mentioned, to capture the project at different stages and to start with on why you have chosen a particular site or multiple sites. In Chennai's case, 6 different neighborhoods, why different neighborhoods were selected, the opportunities, the issues it faces, etc. Because this forms the backing of the scope of work and the RFP that you create. And also, this also helps you in getting pitching to even investment banks and others to make a case on why a particular project is required in a particular area. So with that, I'm going into the meat of the discussion on preparing detailed designs. And to start with, I request Angi to just share the poll through which we want to understand how does your city prepare detailed designs for implementation. So giving it a minute here, how does your city prepare detailed designs for implementation? Is it through developing designs in-house? Is it through empaneled designers? Is it through project-specific hiring of consultants? or is it through a mix of both? Through our conversations and the challenges with the cities, we've realized that some of you are familiar with the different models, while many of you are not familiar with what an empanelment process could be, or a robust and stringent project hiring could be. And that's what the next slides will cover. So we have 16 respondents already. Giving it a few more seconds. Yeah. So Angi, if you can just share this results on the screen. Thank you so much. So these are the responses that we have. 16 out of 40 people who responded. That you have 31% each, majority, I think 31% of people developing it in-house, only through empaneled designers, quite less. A good number through design consultants, and a mix as well. That is it. Thanks for sharing this. So in a nutshell, the preferred routes for developing detailed designs can either be through hiring design consultants, and this is the route which is more recommended. And the now second approach is that of developing designs in-house. And through the coming few slides, I'll take you through both these processes, where this is more preferred and what the process in general is. So the first one on hiring design consultants, the first question that often comes up on is, why do we need to hire design consultants? And not stressing on this much, because both Raj, Nikki, as well as Jinal has spoken about this, from the eye to details, the specific skill sets that these people bring on. But in a nutshell, the requirement of having urban designers, urban planners, utility experts, and other consultants with different skill sets is because their scope of work cross-cuts multiple domains. And shown here in 3 bubbles are 3 of the larger pieces that come into discussion when you speak about street transformation in cities. The first one is a scope that involves creating a citywide network plan for walking and cycling. This can be at a neighborhood level as well. The second one is then developing detailed designs for an identified set of streets. And the third one is design detailing itself, very contextual, very specific to certain elements and what the vision and the scope of a city and its RFP speaks about. So a design detailing. So it is because of the varied skill sets that's required for these activities. And if you compare, for example, the laptop that you look in front of you, or the building that you are in, or a hospital, or any such product or space has multiple people with multiple skill sets who come together. If you look at the building that you are in, you have MEP consultants, you have architects, you have interior designers, you have structural engineers, many people with their skill sets coming in, and it's not just one set of people trying to do all of them. It's different people coming, and that contributes to the success. So similarly, the need for people with different skill sets, urban designers, planners, and others comes into this picture. So taking a quick look at the scope of work itself, broadly, number one, on creating a network plan, which can be for a neighborhood or the city, has a precursor activity of having discussions with stakeholders in the city to develop a vision itself. And very broadly, in the cream color bubbles are mentioned the scope of work, where number one, for the consultant, it's about collecting and compiling and analyzing the data that is there across the neighborhood and across the city. And then developing the long-term vision for the city itself of, or the neighborhood, depending on the scale, of where it is and where it can be going ahead, and a lot of stakeholder consultations with different departments and the public towards developing this. And then based on that, preparing a neighborhood or citywide network plan itself, and then preparing a facing for this in year 1, year 2, year 3, which streets or which neighborhoods can be taken up, or within a neighborhood, which streets can be taken up, and what the budget would entail for doing this. So broadly, this is what the scope of work of creating a network plan at the neighborhood level or the city level would entail. And the second bucket is that of detailed designs. And Nikki has taken all of us through in detail, so not spending much time here. But broadly, it entails developing like an inception report, conceptual plans, working with the city, doing trials on the ground, tactical urbanism trials, and then developing detailed designs, which will be the long list of drawings, BOQs, supporting the city while implementing on the ground, impact assessment, and more. So like Raj mentioned, it's high time that we develop templates, and that's what we've been doing through the challenges, through the policy templates and other toolkits that we've shared to all of you. And through the learnings that we've captured working with a few cities in the past, we've put together a template for street design projects as well as creating network plans. By mid next week, we'll be sharing this to all of you. But like the few images that Parin showed upfront of the panel discussion, all these images of Pimpri Chinchwad or Mumbai, all of these are projects where there is a flare of design that's come in, of different experts that's come together. And that's why the project looks so successful and has good responses from the people. So the next question that comes is now, how do we ensure competent design consultants are hired? So in a nutshell, for those of you who are not familiar, and as a reminder for those of you who have not worked in this space for a while, that the solution is through a streamlined and stringent evaluation process. So when a project RFP is put out, or the RFP can cover multiple project sites also, consultants will attend the pre-bid meeting and will submit their bids. All bids will be opened and then filtered based on the pre-qualification criteria that is set in the RFP. And those who are filtered out will then be shortlisted and evaluated based on the bid system that is there. So the qualification criteria, broadly, it covers like the experience of the consultant working in the type of projects that the scope of work is covering. We're talking about street design, then past experience working in street design projects or public space projects, like working with the government, and also other elements like their annual turnover, net worth, etc. And many of these are governed by city and state level tender acts as well. Now, after assuming that 15 people apply and 5 people are not eligible and 10 people then go into the next section, they are then evaluated based on the bid system that is there. We'll discuss that further in the coming slides, but broadly, the bid system has technical evaluation criteria as well as financial evaluation criteria. Technical evaluation criteria will be basically specific marks that will be given to the consultants team or a consortium for the project's experience that they have, for a presentation that they might make in front of a technical review committee, the different team members that the RFP requires them to have on their team, so on and so forth. The financial evaluation criteria, again, will be based on what the RFP asks for. It can be a bid for a per kilometer rate. It can be for an area. It varies again. But broadly, a few points to note are kept on the site where, like Raj also briefly touched upon, that for very small projects, probably the qualification criteria, because of the skill sets and what it entails, is not so much. It can be probably toned down in some senses because it gives an opportunity for even freshers in the field to apply and bid for the same. However, like the panelists spoke, for a large complex project, it requires specific skill sets and multiple other factors on the fact that a consultant needs to deliver on the same that comes into picture. And hence, cities work on relooking at qualification criteria and evaluation criteria accordingly. It's important to definitely ensure that local and national consultants get an opportunity as well. So in a nutshell, the two bid systems that happens next for evaluation is the single stage cover and then the quality cost-based system. These are the two bid systems that are more commonly used in cities. The first one, the single stage 2 cover 1. So you have 15 people who applied, 5 of them were not eligible. You have 10 of them right now. And number 1, their technical proposal is now evaluated first. And if they meet a minimum benchmark, and the benchmark that is recommended generally is 75% marks based on their technical evaluation. If they meet the benchmark, and then their financial evaluation is opened. If they don't, then they're not eligible. And those who, assuming that 7 of them are shortlisted, clearing the benchmark and their financial evaluation is open, then based on the criteria that the financial evaluation had, that assuming it's for a per kilometer rate, the lowest bidder would then bid. The RFPs normally have clauses to ensure that consultants don't bid extremely low rates as well. And that is captured in the template that we'll be sharing to all of you as well. This is a glimpse into the mega streets Chennai one that Raj took us through, where here it was a single stage 2 cover bid system. There were 6 packages in the 6 different colors that you see as well. And the approach here was that after the technical evaluation, the L1, that is a least cost bidder, got to choose the package of their choice. So assuming the consultant shows the first, the pink color that you see on the top, the second consultant, the L2, then had to work matching the L1 rate and got a chance to pick the second package of their choice. In case the consultant who was L2 was not comfortable working at the rate of L1, they pulled out, and then L3 got an option to decide, and it went around such that everyone got to pick a particular package. So this is a particular model where a single RFP itself can have multiple projects and multiple project sites that are covered in them. Quickly going through the next one on quality cost-based system, that here the difference is that both technical and financial bids are open together. In the previous one, you had the technical opened, evaluated, 75%, and then financial. Here, both are open together, and the RFP clearly mentions what is the weightage that the evaluation will be for each component. What is recommended usually is somewhere in the range of 70% for technical evaluation and 30% for the financial evaluation. And based on your overall score, the best scoring consultant gets the bid. So those are the 2 bid systems that are commonly used. And now just quickly going into the approaches to hiring design consultants, which again was discussed in the panel discussion, to summarize that of sorts, that number 1, you can hire consultants based on specific projects. Number 2 is empaneling of design consultants. And number 3, which many cities have been experimenting and doing it quite well recently, is invitation-based low-value procurement. We'll be sharing these slides for you to go through in detail, but just going through broadly a comparison across the 3, that when the first one on tendering is normally done for a particular project or projects, like the Mega Streets example that you can relate to, and a budget for the same has already been allocated by the city because they had to put out the tender. The empaneling approach is when the city wants to bring on board a pool of design consultants for a period of time, and they can tap into that pool of empaneled designers for different design projects as and when it emerges. The third one is normally done as a quick hiring for small scale projects, neighborhood projects. If you had attended the previous workshops, you would have heard Sensing Local from Bangalore who had spoken. Projects in Bangalore of the Suma project partly came under this, where it depends again from city to city and state to state, depending on what their benchmark is of low value. It might be 5 lakh or 50 lakh, depending on your city, but you could reach out to consultants depending on that bracket under this vertical as well. The time duration for the first one is based on the deliverable and the period that the RFP speaks about. Number 2 is about the duration of empanelment that is mentioned. And number 3 is for the specific deliverables itself. The number of consultants for RFP and the project-based hiring can vary. Like I mentioned, the Mega Streets had multiple consultants hired through a single RFP, or it can be a one project, one consultant hiring as well. For empaneling, it's ideal to empanel not more than 5 consultants through the same EOI for a city. If you have a different scope of work that you have, you can empanel different consultants for that separately. For the third category, it's usually single consultant fees that is covered in low value procurement. And the only difference in work orders is that for empaneling, just because a consultant is empaneled, it does not mean that they are guaranteed a street project. It varies based on different factors that are there. But for the first and third one, if you're hired based for the project, you'll be getting the project, the work order itself. The broad process itself is covered here, which you're all familiar with already, that it's about preparing the scope of work, qualification criteria, rolling it out. Number 2, once you roll it out, you have pre-bid meetings with the consultants. Number 3, you evaluate the submissions, what we discussed earlier. Number 4, you give the work orders. And number 4, you closely work with the consultants to review their work and ensure the deliverables are met. That brings us to the second approach that cities do use on in-house design development. And while few cities are working in developing designs in-house, like the metaphors that I used earlier, it's always good that when you are new to the space, you start small. So if you are intending to develop designs in-house and you are not familiar with street design projects, start small with a small site for tactical urbanism or a neighborhood street or so. Ensure that you cover all the processes that are mentioned in a normal scope of work, from adequate understanding of the site, ensuring the designs meet design standards. It's reviewed by a review committee who is technically sound. So smaller scale projects are what is normally recommended before you build your experience and capacity in the space, and you hire the right set of people, most importantly, so that you have the skill sets of urban designers, planners, utility experts, and others, so that when you look at the site, you are able to look at it comprehensively and develop a design accordingly. So cross-cutting both these processes of hiring, be it in-house or design development or project-based hiring that is there, it's important to have a technical review committee in place. It could be a subset of sorts to your larger Apex committee that is there. But the role of the technical review committee is to ensure that the designs are supervised in different stages, the scope of work requirements are met, the right set of people are onboarded. This committee reviews proposals that come in, ensures the process happens, the right people are onboarded. So the technical review committee plays a very key role in both the processes. And all of this will be captured in the RFP template that we share to you next week. So to sum up the point that Raj and Nikki mentioned about design guidelines as well, cities like Chennai, Pune, Bangalore, and others have design guidelines that are adopted, which follows the Indian Roads Congress as well. It's been adopted by these cities, and we'll be sharing a template of the version that has been adopted by Smart Cities Mission and Mohua as well in the coming months. So we urge all cities to adopt the design guidelines, because no matter which consultant that you work with, or if you develop designs eventually with a technically sound team in-house, you're able to refer to these design guidelines to ensure that your designs are as per standards. So that's about it. We have spoken about the next step of testing and learning at length in previous workshops. So with that, I hand it over back to Varsha.
Thank you, Venu, for sharing the details on the importance and the process of hiring urban designers. With that, we move into the last but most important session for the day. I would like to invite Bala, our Senior Associate ITDP, to share the submission process and the evaluation criteria for round 1 submissions. Questions will be addressed at the end of the session. Please do drop your questions in the question and answer box. Over to you, Bala.
Thank you, Asha. So good afternoon, everyone. We'll be looking at the evaluation process and the requirements now in this section. As we already have discussed in detail about what and how you can go about hiring a good designer and why it's important to have a good designer towards your implementation itself. We'll have a quick look at the requirements towards the next submission. So this is the broader set of timeline that we are looking at, which is something that we already introduced to you in the Bangalore workshop. We are now in August. We are looking at October as the next immediate key milestone for us. So we have the progress submission, the round 1 submission in October. We'll also have a Healthy Streets offline workshop 2 happening in October. We'll share more details on that in the coming weeks. And the round 2 submission after that will happen in April 2023. So we have exactly like around 50 days now towards the first round of submission. So the overall submission process will work this way. All the cities, both the stage 2 cities and also the season 2 cities, are expected to do their submission for the round 1. The deadline for that is 7th October. We'll also soon share the more detailed guide and also the templates on how you have to go about the submission itself. The 7th October is the submission for the first round for you also to keep in mind. So all the cities who submit their work by 7th October, they will be shortlisted. They will be like screened with the requirements that set forth by the team. Only the cities who qualify the round 1 submission will then be eligible for the round 2 submission. So all the cities who want to be like part of the challenges have to meet these basic requirements that has been set forth for the round 1. We'll also have a quick look at the requirements in the coming slides now. But before that, like once the cities are moving to the round 2, they'll also be further shortlisted, and only a set of cities who are eligible from round 2 as well will be presenting to the jury. And finally, the jury will choose the winners from the challenges. So now we'll focus on the round 1 submission, which is the progress submission towards the final submission itself. So these are the 39 cities we have in the stage 2 of C4C and S4P. I'm sure like most of you are already familiar which bucket you are part of, whether it's stage 2 or season 2. So for stage 2 cities, for all these 39 cities, though, this is the basic requirement towards the October 2022 submission. So like most of you are already working towards these pointers, so it's nothing new for you, but it's just a reminder for you to kind of kickstart your work if you haven't, and also speeden up your work in a better pace so that you can get it done before October. So under action bucket, we expect you all to have at least 15 kilometers of detailed design done to implement healthy streets network. A lot of you already have like your scale of plans. So if you have your network plans, you have your scale of plans, please go ahead and start designing your streets with more details. And second, out of the 15 kilometer, you must have designed at least test trials for 5 kilometers. It need not be like a grand tactical urbanism interventions. It could be even like simple traffic trials. It could be like very simple community engagements, but we want you to do that at least for 5 kilometers. And following that, we also want you to work on traffic calming as a very big component. It's not going to be like a heavy lift for you, but you can implement very simple footpaths with simple traffic calming elements for like under 10 kilometers of streets. Addition to that, like other initiatives like the bicycle sharing system or cycle training clinics, etc., could be like very much appreciable, but those are not mandatory things. Under the foundation, we want you to set up the Apex committee. We know that already 20 plus cities have done it. Other cities, it's time for you also to get it done. And with respect to the Healthy Streets department as well, we have around like 7 to 8 cities already done it. We want the other cities also to complete the sanctioning of the department itself. And the third part is the policy adoption. We already had shared the Healthy Streets policy last year, and a lot of cities have also adopted it already. We want the other cities to do it now. And finally, the network plan. So we shared the network planning exercise guide and the toolkit for that in the last workshop. So please prepare your network plan for walking and cycling. It can be a city level network plan, also could be a neighborhood level network plan based on however you would like to proceed further with your cities. And finally, under the communication piece, the first part is to have an appointed team and allocated budget for campaigns. And second thing, also to have recurring campaigns. It need not be like you have to do all the campaigns, but you can start with one and be consistent with that. So that's for the stage 2 cities that we went at. Now it's season 2 cities. We have 53 cities who register with us for the season 2. So a lot of these cities are also active now with the challenges. So for these cities, we have a slightly toned down version of the requirements because they started a little late. We also want to give you a little more space to grow and scale up. So under the action, we expect you to have at least 5 kilometers of detailed design prepared by October, out of which you should be able to at least have 3 kilometer tested. And with traffic calming as well, if you could do 5 kilometers, that would suffice for the requirement. And under foundation, though we understand that setting up a department may take its own time, we want you to at least start with the Apex committee, set up an Apex committee. As the panelists mentioned, that could be a good starting point for you to have the interdepartmental coordination and also kind of streamline your processes going forward. We also understand that the policy adoption may take a few weeks or months in your case. So at least we want you all to kind of share the policy for public consultation. So already the template is available in our website. If you have not started the work, please start customizing them for your city and share with the public for consultation. And finally, for communication, continue our Open Streets campaign. And a lot of cities also have recently launched the Cycle to Work or Cycle to Shop campaigns. We also want them to stay consistent, so that could become part of your submission. And we'll also be soon sharing the leaderboard for Healthy Streets, Healthy Cities. This also could help you to track your progress. Meanwhile, make sure you fill in the monthly form so that we are also be aware of what your progress has been so far. Now, the submission format itself, this is the first round of submission is going to be like a very simple one. We just want to have a look at what you have achieved so far. So it's going to be a Google form based submission. There is not going to be any presentation or like any jury as such for now. So we will share a Google form very soon, right after this workshop. So share all the details through the Google form. And one important component with the submission is the cover letter. We require a cover letter from each of the city highlighting all the work that you have completed after June 2021 and how it's also addresses to the goals that is enlisted for the 2023 Healthy Streets, Healthy Cities goals. So we look forward to receiving your submissions, which is due on October 7th. Good luck to all the cities. We'll also soon be sharing the templates and the Google form for you to fill up them. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala, for taking us through the submission process. We have some questions from the audience. I now request Bala and Venu to answer these questions. Also, we have an exciting quiz coming up right after, so everyone please stay tuned. So here we go. The first question is, do we need to hire separate consultants for network planning versus street design? Could Venu take up this?
Yeah. Not necessarily if the consultant comes in with experience and skill sets, but if not, it is recommended. As mentioned, you're speaking about network planning and you have street design. So like Raj also touched upon street design, if it's one street, etc., then it could be a consultant who has some experience in the space, whereas network planning entails a lot more things of understanding the site, a lot of stakeholder consultations, exercise of mapping, prior experience that comes with it. So a consultant who's done only street design works not necessarily might have that experience, but depending on your context. For example, in Chennai Mega Streets case, like Raj mentioned, it's a particular package, 6 packages or 6 neighborhoods. So each consultant that came in, they took up a package, they developed the vision, they developed the network plan, and then they developed the street design as well. And here for smaller consultants, the option of consortiums were also permitted so that they could tie up with multiple consultants and form a larger consortium and apply. So that way, it's open for everyone that way.
Okay. The next question is also to you. Can we empanel consultants of varied experience and expertise to create a larger pool for quick access to all types of future projects?
Yes, in my experience and from discussing with the team, not sure if that's been done elsewhere, but certainly that's something that should be considered doing, and empaneling itself is not something which not many cities are familiar with itself. So here we're speaking about empaneling consultants in different varying experience and skill sets, and you tap into them. I think Raj also strongly mentioned from experience in Chennai as well that that could be an approach where you are saving time from the process of tendering itself. And once you have different scope of works and different skill sets, people that are empaneled, all that you need is to tap into that pool. So it fast tracks your work itself.
Thank you. Now, the next question is for Bala. How can I make my city qualifies for round 2 and make by qualifying round 1 and make it to round 2?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, like only the cities who qualify the basic requirements that were laid out in today's presentation will be eligible for round 2 submission itself. So the kind of requirements are also again spread across like foundation, action, and communication. So you have to match all these requirements for you to get qualified for round 2. So only the cities who qualify for round 1 will get to round 2. So all these requirements are mandatory, other than the other initiatives that we have separately bucketed out.
Okay. Thank you, Bala and Venu. It is now time for the challenge mantra quiz. I request Smritika to share her screen for this. And I request all the participants to make sure they have their device ready, and link for the quiz is displayed on screen. You can join it through slido.com, number 3099597. And if it's easier, the QR code is also displayed on screen. You can access the quiz through the QR code. Scan the QR code and access the quiz. For your convenience, we'll drop the link to the quiz on the chat box as well. So you can access it by typing slido.com and the number 3099597. Glad to see you guys joining in. The QR code is still visible on the screen. So if you have a QR code scanner, please go ahead and scan it for easy access. The link has also been dropped in the chat box, so you can access it through the Slido link. I'm repeating the number 3099597. We'll wait for 10 more seconds for people to join in, and then we'll commence this quiz. Final call 3099597. Okay, I hope everyone is here. Let us start the quiz now. So the first question is it possible to hire multiple design consultants through single RFP? Yes or no? I'm repeating the question. Is it possible to hire multiple design consultants through a single RFP? I hope you've typed your answers. I hope you've chosen the right option. Now let's see what your response has been. So 71% of you have told that it's yes. So let's see the answer. And you're all on the right page. It is possible to hire multiple designers in the single RFP. So we'll go to the next question. Does empaneling urban designers guarantee that the project will be awarded? Yes or no? Does empaneling urban designers guarantee that the project will be awarded? I hope you've all chosen your answers. Let us see your responses now. Okay. So let's see if the response is right. Yeah. It doesn't guarantee that empaneling the urban designers means that the project will be awarded. Let's go to the next question. What is the recommended weightage to be given to the technical and financial bids in the QCBS system? Is it 40% technical and 60% financial, or 20% technical and 80% financial, 70% technical and 30% financial, 10% technical and 90% financial? I'm repeating the question. What is the recommended weightage to be given to technical and financial bids in the QCBS system? I hope you've chosen your answers. Let's see your responses now. Okay, it's 70% technical and 30% financial. And that is the right answer. And for the last question, what is the deadline for the progress submission? Is it September 7th or October 7th or November 7th? What is the deadline for progress submission? I hope you remember it was mentioned. So let us see your responses now. Glad that people are all on page. It is October 7th. So congratulations, people who got all 4 of them right. You can see the first 5 winners over here. And yeah, now I would like to invite Venu to quickly summarize the workshop today.
Thanks, Varsha. So we'll share this on the WhatsApp group as well on the next steps. But from our side, we'll be sharing, like we said, the RFP template for hiring design consultants that you could tweak based on street design and network planning, etc. And we urge you to work towards the October milestones that you have to submit to the progress report, which under action is to develop detailed designs for 15 kilometers of streets by hiring urban designers, under foundation to set up the Apex committee, conceptualize the healthy streets policy and work towards adoption, developing the network plan, setting up the design cell, and rolling out open streets campaign under communication. So we'll be sharing more nudges towards the same on the WhatsApp group, and looking forward to working with all of you towards the submissions.
And so we've come to the end of the 3rd online workshop for stage 2 for India Cycles for Change and Streets for People challenges. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Do reach out to the coordination team at ITDP for any queries. Good luck and keep sharing your updates with us. We will soon share the video and the presentations from today's session for your reference. Thank you all. Have a great day.